It's an absolutely beautiful day to deal with the review of a figure that I didn't think I'd have, and some customizing controversy that has recently come up. This guy is the perfect guy to address both of those things in the latest GotBot True review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, and of course subscribe. Stick around the channel, check out the playlist, see what it is that catches your interest. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, and Transformers Collectors NL, and me everywhere. And this is the Transformers Titans Return. I think it's Doomshot, I think was the Titan Master, and Megatron, with a lot of custom work done. Not as much as what some people have done, but kind of a significant amount. I passed this guy over at regular retail. I didn't anticipate getting him, but I found him at a local convention for a really good deal, and he was complete. Well, except for his ever-popular collector card and his box and his instructions, which I kind of didn't need because I have Blitzwing, so I have instructions if I really got confused. And I said a few moments ago that this guy was the perfect guy to look at, because here's how we're going to kind of handle things today. I'm going to do the full review for this guy. We're going to come back here, as we normally do, but instead of really doing the kind of usual sign-off, I'm going to kind of transition from there into dealing with a little bit of a customizing controversy that's come up. A little bit of flack that I got after doing episode 450. So, review first, back here for kind of final thoughts on this guy, and then we'll kind of jump off into the customizing controversy, and I'll take a couple of minutes just to sort of address that. Because I wasn't going to, but I feel like it's something that, to be fair, I really should. And shout out to Shane for pointing some things out that I hadn't really thought of before. He's a guy that, over time with our interactions, I've grown to respect as being intelligent, insightful, and he has a great skill set for doing a lot of things, especially when it comes to custom work, that like I said, over time I've grown to respect. So I did want to address it, because he brought up some great points and a few things that I had even forgotten myself to mention along the way. Nevertheless, I actually think this guy was a better use of the mold than Blitzwing was. And I'll explain why. Let's head over to the table and take a closer look at this guy. I know. I said I'm going to talk about the customizing controversy after the review. And I'm going to do that. But then I open another can of worms and create a new layer of controversy by saying that I believe that this mold is better served as being Megatron than Blitzwing. And I do think it was intended originally to be Blitzwing. And I throw yet another layer on because if you have been following me for any length of time, then you know that I always present these guys the way they come in a package and do the conversion that way. Well, I'm starting out in tank mode here because when I could show kind of other methods of transformation, I do like to do it. And I've already shown this mold when I looked at Blitzwing in episode 326, along with a little bit of an update I did for him in episode 328. So I've already shown this mold in a package, which is, of course, the robot mode. So we're going to start here. Why? Because we don't have a box, we don't have instructions, we don't have the ever-popular collector card, as per usual, because I got this from Mike from Buddy Toad Collectibles at a local sci-fi type of convention, and got him for a great deal. I never intended to get this. It's not really my Megatron, but I couldn't pass it up. And as imperfect as he is, I saw the potential there to do something pretty good with him. In this mode, though I have custom work done on him, you don't see much of it, if any of it. About the only thing you can see is back here where I have that seat for Doomshot here attached. You know, you could also attach that on the top of this. Normally it's gray. I painted it black to give the fusion cannon in robot mode and overall look like it is the fusion cannon. So the only thing really to show in terms of accessories before we dive right into the figure is this, I guess. It's Doomshot set in the seat that becomes part of the fusion cannon, so you can put him there. And of course Doomshot up close is like every other Titan Master with a ball joint head, ball joint shoulders, and can get in a seated position like this, and he is pinned at the hips, and of course you can put his arms down by his side and fold them up really into a little square to get this Megatron head. And like, it's an alright sculpt. I feel like the front of his helmet piece is down a little low. I also felt like he needed his black unibrow. I managed to put it in with a toothpick. It was really hard. We're dealing with such a small area there, and I couldn't put the little triangle pieces sort of in under his helmet because the space just isn't there. But nevertheless, I hope that this kind of evokes the character of Megatron just a little bit better than what the pure molding did. And just cause, here's what the fusion cannon looks like all black. You know, we still have an empty seated section there, but it's much better than having a gray end on it. And that leaves us with this main tank body with the little itty bitty stubby barrel up there. We're going to do the conversion, I guess, to plane mode. I guess, hey, why not? And from there we will go to the robot mode. I haven't done this guy in ages, so it should be interesting to see how much I have actually forgotten. I'm just going to kind of reorient things here a little bit, and we'll go to plane mode. And by the way, before we go straight to plane mode, you can fold the wings right out like that and have flying tank, and who doesn't like a flying tank? So I guess we'll say that step 1 is bringing the wings out, step 2 is pushing this down, and we'll just lift it off for now because we're going to have to deal with it in a bit. Step 3 is picking the hands off of the side, and what you have, actually, once you pick them off, you bend them up here at this elbow hinge so that they fold up around like this. And really what you had done for the tank is his fist was on over this 5mm peg right here, and that's true on both sides, so you can bring that all the way up. Now you're going to take this whole wing assembly and you're going to rotate it down. In what I have painted black, there is a rectangular notch. And there's going to be a rectangular peg that we're pulling out up here when we swing this around, and that rectangular peg is going to go into that rectangular notch. Pretty straightforward. So we bring this up, we bring this down, and it goes in. We pick this assembly off, we rotate it around, and it goes in, so that we have something that kind of starts to look more like a plane. And at this point we want to take the chest and we're going to angle that all the way down so that it basically flips down over the abdomen, and we're going to rotate out the nose of the plane. At this point we need to turn this upside down. So we'll do that and finish this off. And here's our noseless plane with a bunch of junk underneath. Well, not much left here now. We pick this up and fold down that tail fin. We pick up, should be able to pick up these wings. So I'm not sure why I'm not able to pick, there we go. And fold that piece down, solidify that arm back in place, and we come to the nose here. We open it up, we flip out, if I can get to it, the nose cone, bring it down. That's a questionable Decepticon symbol there on the front. This side for some reason now likes to pop off on me. There I have it solidified, wings down, and in the end, boom, here is our plane. And it is something that looks very, very gray now because you can see some of the custom paint work that I've done with this guy in this mode. First things first, In this mode, you have that little nub of a cannon down underneath. You could still have the fusion cannon piece over. I'm not doing that. And in terms of the seat for Doomshot, if you wanted to, what you have is a couple of little pieces here that, like notches on that, fit down over. It does help sort of hold the legs together more securely and tightly. But I don't want to do that because this leg section is one of the places where I've done a lot of custom work. I used the glass gray and covered in the red that was on his knees and took it right down the front of the leg. Actually, I took it down a little bit over the foot, but they're folded away now and you can't really see them. Nevertheless, while it could be argued that the red that was there kind of helped break up the gray, I kind of like the cohesive look of the gray. The sticker on the nose cone, that Decepticon symbol, is a bit iffy. This one seems pretty secure, but I think one, if not two, of the little points have kind of not been applied correctly, so it's a little smushed. And I took off his little chest hair, curly silver details. I don't know. I get it. It was a throwback to the G1 toy, and some people like it. But for me, my Megatron is the animation one, and it's just not there from my recollection. Nevertheless, I think it's pretty cool looking plane mode. So we're going to do the last thing and go from tank, which was pretty easy to get from tank to here, and go from here to robot. By the way, I will say this. In both tank mode and this mode, especially tank mode, when you collapse the shins into these legs, and there's a little nub that very almost high on the hip is where it tabs in, I find that it tabs in smoothly on this version of the mold. I had to struggle with it to get it to tab in correctly on the Blitzwing version of the mold. Why? I do not know, but I do find that the conversion here is smoother. Okay, robot mode. So I backed it up here in the hopes that maybe we can actually get this guy converted and sort of, hopefully, kind of completely on screen. We shall see. It's not hard, again, so we begin by opening the nose cone up, putting that in, closing that down. We want to sort of pick this piece off, and we're going to fold the entire plane section down and under, and we're going to take the chest. Actually, before we take the chest, we're going to lift these wings off the side and bring them back up around, just like we did in tank mode. And now we're going to take the chest and extend it. It was folded down over the abdomen, and we just peg it in. For these arm sections, we bring it down as if we were going to the tank mode. And then this little bit here on the edge, we fold up, we rotate the arm around, we fold this piece in. We do the same on the other side, where we bring this down, and I'm going through this quickly because I've shown it. Fold that up, turn it around, fold in the tires. That is kind of where we're to. We can close up those pieces, I guess, for now, and I don't know, let's fold them back just to get them out of the way a little bit. And this is what we have so far. We take the shoulder pieces here and we bring them up, but before we do that, I just want to point out that there's a large pin in right here on both sides, and on my Blitzwing, both of those pins came out and both arms fell off. Now it's easy to just push a pin back in, but still, I kind of feel like that probably shouldn't have happened at all. Nevertheless, it has not happened with this guy. So far, I enjoy this mold more as Megatron because the legs were easier to tab in when going to tank, and his arms haven't fallen off. You take this whole piece, bring it up. Snap it in. You take this whole piece, bring it up, and snap it in. And now the guy has and snap it in. Now the guy has two arms up in place. We turn him around to the back. And we take this whole tank turret piece that was facing this way, we turn it around and bring it up on his back. This little bit that we call the cannon turret, that is going to serve as the piece that sort of comes up over his back, his shoulder, that is like the gun barrel that we're used to seeing in the G1 animation. Of course, in the G1 toy, that barrel sort of came out by his side, hip, instead of up over his shoulder. So I kind of like that this comes up over his shoulder. That being said, we now take the wings and you bring them all the way back and you fold in that little tiny piece. You can do this with Blitzwing too, but I think in Blitzwing's case, they're intended to stay out. I think they're intended to fold back like this, specifically for Megatron. And we take this piece and we fold it back and fold it in, and while he has a bit of a backpack, it's not bad at all. Not at all. Okay, so now we're left with the legs. So what do we do with the legs? Well, I had pushed these back to get them out of the way, but I suppose really what we should do is put them this way for now to get them out of the way. The legs are together, so you're going to want to split them apart. Then you need to open this panel up in the back of the leg. And you will see that the whole thing is collapsed. On the front here, there's a little tab just in behind the knee that's into a kind of a slot on the thigh. You pick that off, and the slot that I'm talking about is this little slot right here. You pick that off, and you bring the whole knee out until it snaps in place, and you flip out the foot. You close this up, and again, on Blitzwing, I leave these out by his foot. On Megatron, I put them up by the side. On the other side, we open this panel up, we take that tab out of the front, we bring the whole leg down, we rotate the foot out, we close up his shin, and again, where we have these wings on the side, we fold them up. And we pretty much have him in robot mode, and now he's gone out of frame. So what in the heck here are we missing? Simply put, his fusion cannon, and there are pegs on either side that go into a slot here on his arm, and of course, his cranial unit, which a lot of times I find I need to put the head on backwards in order to get it to fit in and then turn it around. But in the end, boom, here we have Titans Return Megatron in his robot mode. Paint apps fresh out of box. I think he looked more like Super Megatron, maybe a little bit, a nod to it, kind of, sort of. And I would have given it a solid 8.5, like you knew it was Megatron. But with the kind of touch-ups I did on the fusion cannon, on his legs, by the way, since they're supposed to be black on the side, I also put a little bit of black over here. The gray on his abdomen, where I also sort of just barely touched in the red, the yellow, and the little blue dot that he has there. And the little bit of black eyebrows that I managed to somehow squeeze in there. I would say that it looks more Megatronish. It's probably... See, I'd like to say like a 9.5, but I know the criticism people will have. He is kind of this ugly, cheap-looking gray plastic instead of a beautiful, lush silver. I'm okay with the color he is, but I can see why people would have a problem with it. So I'm going to say that even though I made those changes, like you know it's Megatron, I'm going to say it's about an 8.75. It's a bit better than it is out of package. By the way, I mentioned, I think, how this guy is perfect to look at when I talk about the customization controversy. Well, part of that reason is because you could do the things that I have done here pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty basic. Or you could take a much more advanced approach, and that's what I'm going to talk about. What you could do with this guy. It's not what I did, but what you could do to make him at least a 9.75, because the fact of the matter is he's either a plane or a tank. His alt mode is not your traditional pistol. That being said, it's still a strong start because you know it looks like Megatron. And honestly, I think the silhouette looks more like Megatron. Here he is next to my custom Titans Return Blitzwing, and I'm going to tell you now, mixing a color to kind of match his beige is a nuisance. But I talked about what I mixed together in his review. Nevertheless, I guess it looks okay. It's grown on me. I like the Generations one because I did the shoulder fix on it, but this has grown on me. By the way, though his arms and the pins fell off that one time, they have not fallen off since I put them back on, which is a credit to him. Of course, Megatrons have never fallen off, but with the wings out, maybe it looks a little more Blitzwing-ish. I feel like the arms and shoulders on Blitzwing, I feel like they match Megatron more. Just saying. Just my opinion, and of course, yours might be that both of these are good. I don't know. I don't know. You're entitled to think whatever you like. But there's the two of them together. And just as another comparison for Megatron, here he is with my go-to Megatron, the third-party Toy World Hegemon, who I also did some custom paint apps on. I looked at in episode 133 ages ago as part of a little evolution of Megatron series I did in 4 videos there. Since then, I've looked at even more. Most recently, that Studio Series one, and man, I thought that was pretty good in episode 414. I like the Studio Series Megatron. But that's not the topic here. The topic here is this Megatron. So, you can see the way they look there, but I will say this, at least for now. If something was to happen, or break, or crack, or whatever on Hegemon, I'm not spending the dough to replace Hegemon. My stand-in for Megatron then will become the Titans Return version. Of course, Siege is coming up, so who knows what we might get in that. But right now, I don't think it's a bad Megatron if it's your Megatron of choice. And for such a long time I said, is it really so hard to do a decent Voyager Megatron? We've had a leader, that leader class Combiner Wars one, you know, we've had even that little Legends one, where he still kind of looked like a miner. We've had a bunch of deluxes, some good, some not so good, although that War for Cybertron one was fantastic. Was it really so hard to get a decent Voyager Megatron? Well, I think we have the answer now because this isn't bad. It wasn't really for me where I have Hegemon, but not bad. So what about the articulation and the transformation? We have a 9.75. Transformation, it's easier on this than it is on Blitzwing. I find that things peg in nicer on this copy of the mold for whatever weird reason. I don't know why. I'm going to say that his transformation is a good 8.5. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and I'm not frustrated with anything on him. So we had a 9.75, we had an 8.5, he's like a 9.15 at the moment. What about his articulation? Well, the head, it can go left and right. We can bring the, oop, that's not quite tabbed in. We can rotate the arms up, we can rotate the arms back. They don't rotate quite all around. They can go way out to the side, way up over his head. There's a bicep swivel. There's an elbow to 90 degrees. Nothing at the wrist. I guess that's a bit too bad. We do not have a waist on him. That's a bit too bad. We do have legs way out to the front, way out to the back, and the guy can do the splits 4 days. Thigh swivel, 90 degrees at the knee, and nothing really at the feet. A couple of things I would have liked to have seen, especially a waist swivel on him. But I guess sometimes beggars can't be choosers. I'm going to say that overall his articulation is about, you know what, let's just say it's about an 8. He was roughly a 9. That's about an 8. He's about an 8.5. It's a pretty decent outing for Megatron. It's a pretty decent outing for a Transformer. Not perfect, but I can certainly understand why some people would choose this one as the Megatron for their Chug display. And here we are once again, and yeah, I really kind of like how this turned out. Everything feels solid on him. I feel like these legs tab in easier than they do on Blitzwing for whatever strange reason. I can't see a reason why when I compare the two side by side. This guy's arms have not fallen off. The pin in right here at the shoulder is absolutely secure on this guy, or so it feels to me. Even though they came off on Blitzwing, they were easy enough to push in. It really, they never should have come off to begin with. I kind of had problems with this guy out of package. Though it could be argued that his paint scheme was more evocative maybe of like Super Megatron, possibly, a little bit. Still, for me and the G1 purist in me, I had to touch up the belly and the shins and the side of the leg. But most importantly, this gray piece on his fusion cannon to kind of give it that look. It's too bad that this is not filled in with something in just a hollow space. Alas, it can't be perfect. The articulation is great. The conversion is effective. I think the tank probably works a bit better than the plane. I've seen people who have removed these stickers, and as mentioned, mine so far seem to be holding pretty well. I don't feel a need to remove them, but when and if they fall off, that's fine too. I think it's a strong figure, and I find myself enjoying the mold more as Megatron than I ever have as Blitzwing. Even if I think the actual intention was Blitzwing. Who knew? Okay, on to part 2 here now. And if you're gonna leave us, then hey, as always, thanks for dropping by and giving me some of your valuable time. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit here inside the video. For those of you, however, who are sticking around to find out what this customizing controversy is, well, let me begin to address it now. In episode 450, I replied to the BYOC challenge, which was bring your own custom. And it did run kind of long, understandably. It ran long because you had to explain, one of the rules was you had to explain what you did to customize the figure, or in my case, 2 new ones that I did, which was Whisper and Universe Smokescreen. And I said there that I also kind of deliberately broke a figure, being Smokescreen, to a degree, just to see if I could sort of show how to fix it, or an option to fix it. Now, at the time I said that, you know what, there are people who will say you need to sand a figure and clean it and do all of these steps, which I'll address in a moment. But you don't need to do all that when you're customizing a figure. You don't need to. You don't need to get expensive paints and whatnot. And I got a bit of flack for saying that. In fact, there are a couple of people who said, don't give people bad advice. And I stand by what I said. I don't think it was bad advice. But let's kind of start from the beginning just a little bit. When you get a figure, you get it really, I think, for one of 3 reasons. Maybe somebody will come up with another one, but I think basically you get it for one of 3 reasons. Either to put on display, never to be touched, surrounded with lights and a security system and probably a couple of guard dogs. Or you get it to put basically on display, but you might take it off the shelf sometimes to sort of fiddle with it a little bit, to play with it a little bit. And then the 3rd reason is for kind of rough and tumble play. It still needs to be durable. One of those 3 reasons. And I think the methods that you use to customize a figure largely will be determined by the reason that you're getting it. And when it comes to customizers, we really have different levels. We have the absolutely inexperienced that has done nothing and don't believe they can. We have the novice that has done a little bit, maybe a touch-up with a marker here or there, but nothing major. We have the moderate who has done some work, maybe molded a couple of things, cut a couple of pieces, but maybe not an entire body repaint. And then we have the advanced customizer, those that have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. Well, I've tried to address a lot of things, especially for beginners, I guess over the years here on the channel. Starting with kind of how to thicken ball joints using the floor polish fix, and how to make a faceplate for the Age of Extinction Optimus Prime in episode 72. I did a how to customize tutorial, beginner basics, and sort of basic tools that you can use that's around your house, and what sort of paints and whatnot you can buy and get that is a very small investment so that you can sort of test your skills and learn and grow and improve. I looked at a bunch of things in that video ranging from the use of toothpicks to different acrylic paints, and that was in episode 274. And I even think I customized maybe Fall of Cybertron Jazz in that episode, I think. In episode 301, I looked at something more advanced, which was dyeing plastic. Specifically, I think it was some custom arms that I had for Titans Return Cop, which is a little bit more advanced and takes a little bit more patience, but it's not that hard. And then in episode 450, I talked about how to sort of layer acrylic paint, and I talked about if you want to remove paint or a tampograph, how you can use paint thinner or rubbing alcohol or even acetone, though I would probably steer clear of acetone, as you would find in nail polish remover. And the sort of effort required, and then how you do need to wash off your figures. But what happens if you don't get it all? And I left it on the kind of ball sockets for the wings of the doors for this guy. Classics Universe Smokescreen. And I left it there and I ended up repairing it. And by the way, he's gone through a few transformations now. This is days later and it's holding fine. I used a product called Bondic that kind of claims to rebuild plastic. And I tried different glues. They didn't really do it. Especially if I wanted them to be pieces that could still move around on the ball joint and still be used for conversion. I've heard of certain plastic welding and resins that seem to require a couple of syringes. One to dispense the, I guess, liquid plastic, and another was like a reaction agent. I feel like that if you don't kind of use that correctly, if you're inexperienced, you could kind of mess something up. But I found this Bondic stuff, and it's easy to use, easier than glue. You put a line of the stuff on, and you use a UV light that comes with it to kind of dry it in 4 or 5 seconds, or cure it in 4 or 5 seconds, and I kind of explained the whole process there. And then a few things were pointed out to me. One was that the white on the edge of the door and on his grill looked a little choppy. And indeed it did, and I forgot to talk about a tool that a lot of customizers would, could, and should use, and that's tape. Tape! Tape the area off, paint over it. Whether you use a spray, an airbrush, or a good old-fashioned brush and some acrylic paint. Paint over it, take the tape off. You might have a little bit that gets under the tape, but you can usually kind of wipe that or scrape that away easy enough. So I went back and I did that, and this is a lot sharper. His grill is now a lot sharper than what it was. And I've never talked about using tape, but masking tape, painter's tape, a great option to use. So I want to thank Shane for pointing that out. He also pointed out that there are different colored UV resins that apparently you can get from a number of craft stores. Maybe, assuming you have a lot of craft stores in your area. We have one, and I don't think I've seen resins out there. Maybe they are, and I just don't know what I'm looking for. But I do know that we have about 5 hardware stores, and that this Bondic product is pretty easy to find at all of them. So I kind of went with what was available. And the Bondic can be kind of molded and shaved and sanded and painted. So it was a great option. But hey, if you can get different color resins and you're comfortable using that, then why not try and find a color that matches exactly what you're looking for? In this case, I was kind of looking for clear anyway, and what I got is pretty much clear, and it works well. Then we got to the actual paint. And for the actual paint, I said, look, I tend to use gloss acrylics mostly. Not always, but mostly. And none of my paints cost over $1.79 Canadian. And that's true. And I really just brushed them on. I said you don't need to wash your figures and do all of these other steps. But for those that are advanced, those are steps that you can do. And I said you don't have to do them. I didn't say you shouldn't do them. If you are a novice or absolutely inexperienced, I'm going to very quickly kind of lay out the steps for you now. just so you're aware of kind of what somebody with more advanced skills is capable of pulling off, and why sometimes you see customs that look like pure pieces of art. The first step is to wash your figure. Ah, there, the last bit. Dry that off. Now, hopefully he's clean. Maybe I should have taken him apart and just washed off each piece first. Nevertheless, here he is, washed, clean, soap, water. It's washing. Pretty simple process. That's right, stand at a sink, wash your figure off, dry them off. Probably even leave them to kind of air dry a little bit in case you didn't get all the water off. Step 2 would be to take your figure apart. It's nicer this day and age where there are more ball joints. It's easier to get a figure apart. In fact, I did take the Combiner Wars Jet Blast-Off apart to paint it into Whisper. It was just easier. So that's great, but sometimes you will encounter pins. And unless you're comfortable with removing pins, I can see why you might steer clear or be nervous about the prospect of taking a figure apart. Step 3 would be to rough up the figure by sanding it. Maybe not quite with high grit sandpaper. That might be a little too rough, but something like... maybe something less abrasive, like an old nail file. Or a sanding block. The softer side of a sanding block. That's probably my best bet. Now that you have the figure apart and roughed up, you could use either spray paint, or if you're skilled enough, mix the paint for use in an airbrush. I know nothing about airbrushing, so anybody who does, hey, fill me in. Let me know how this stuff works. I don't own one. I don't even know where to get one. I know nothing about it. But using spray paint or an airbrush, you can prime the figure in black, white, whatever. I think most people would use white because it's kind of easier to cover. But when you prime something, it sort of looks like this. Case in point. This is Sailor Moon. She is primed in black. I know she's one piece instead of a bunch of different little pieces taken apart, but it's because she's a statue, not a figure. If she was a figure, well, in order to keep her joints able to move, you would have to take her apart. Now I know, that's a one-piece statue that wasn't taken apart, and I didn't do it, Starscream Girlfriend did, and to be fair, she ended up having, like, spray back, she was covered in paint, it was even up her nose. You know, you need kind of, if you're going to use spray paint, or you're going to use an airbrush, I would imagine, you need the space to do it. It probably needs to be pretty well ventilated, and really you need kind of, I would suspect, coveralls, gloves, the right sort of like air mask to filter it out. I think that there's more to it. Once the primer has dried, now you can start applying the color. And if you're going to do the whole thing in one color, it can look like this. And here is Optimus. Now, there was glue actually put in on the few joints this guy has. I didn't review him, by the way, because his arms rotate around, his head rotates around, and his waist rotates around. That's it. His paint apps were a 10. He looked like G1 Optimus Prime. His articulation was like a 1. It was one step above being a statue. His transformation was 0. You know, it's fine for display. And you see he's painted in a silver here. And this was a spray paint. And again, you could have done each part individually, but, you know, there you go. By the way, neither the Sailor Moon or the Optimus at this point, I don't think has been clear coated, but the clear coat is kind of the same process. You just clear coat them with a spray, not a brush. I know, that's an entire silver Optimus Prime. But ideally, I guess, you would want different colors to try and make it as accurate as possible. So you would tape off certain areas, you would spray a red. You would take the tape off, let the red dry. You would, I guess, tape over the red, and now the areas that you had tape, you would, I don't know, spray blue, whatever, depending on the mix that you would want. Eventually, all that paint's going to dry, and you would clear coat it all. Now, one thing that Shane said that I absolutely agree with is that if you're going to clear coat something, you should do it with a spray clear coat, because I've heard a lot of bad stories about ones that you brush on smearing the paint and whatnot. I don't know a lot about clear coating because I don't really do it myself. Now that's a lot of steps until finally you put the figure back together, and presumably it should look phenomenal if you did everything correct. I'm sure that for display or very minor play, those steps and those advanced options probably do indeed give you the best look. I still wonder about just how durable the kind of paint and finish is over time if it's a lot of play, and I think you need to be very careful with just how thick of a layer of paint you put on, especially since you're doing a primer, then the paint, then a clear coat, because if you're dealing with, for example, things like pinholes, the pins need to fit back in the holes. If you're doing a section that has ball joints, the ball joints need to fit back in the sockets, and you wouldn't want to scrape your paint. I'm also curious, if you were to develop a chip or a scrape, well, do you have to start from scratch and do all of those steps over again? Perhaps there are those out there who wouldn't mind doing it all over again to get that finish. Now, that being said, that is way more advanced, especially when I do something more like this. That's good. That comedian just told a joke that I really enjoy. Anyway, back to work. Yeah, I like being comfortable when I customize. So that being said, to get this look, I stuck with as simple and as cost-effective as I could. And that's the sort of tips that I share with you as a beginning customizer or as someone who just has some moderate skill. Yes, you can do all those steps. Do you need to do them? No, you don't, and you can still be quite content with what you end up with. However, because I think what I said kind of came across as a bit offensive to advanced customizers, I do want to kind of offer the apology there. I didn't so much mean that you shouldn't do it as you didn't have to do it. And I hope that that kind of clears it up. Anyway, let me know what you think about this guy. Let me know what you think about the customizing controversy. And let me know what you think about this guy, who I said was perfect for this discussion. And here's why. Because if you were to do a full body paint on this Megatron, you want him to be absolutely silver, and then you want to put the other details on after. Then yes, those advanced techniques of taking the guy apart and doing all those steps and having him sprayed in silver as your base to start working with is probably the best way to go. I don't know, as you move his arms and you convert him and you get oils from your fingers on that beautiful paint, I don't know how well it will last or not. Those more experienced than me would know better. For me, I know he's going to be used with more playwear than what most people tend to give their figures. And in looking at him, I could live with this kind of gray, even though it's not exactly perfect, and silver would have been nicer. I didn't need to redo or to do the entire cannon section. Just this little black piece up here. So kind of painting it over with just a brush works fine. Down here I just wanted to do the front of his shins and a little bit of black on the side. Maybe I could have taken a lot of pieces of tape and taped all of this off and sprayed the side and taped off the front and then, you know, had the leg basically completely covered. But that seems like a lot of work, especially since to get this leg off, I believe you would have to take a pin out at the knee. I have never taken out pins and I'm not comfortable doing it. Maybe you are. But you know what I could do? I could take a brush and some gloss gray on the front, no problem, and do the layering that I've talked about in episode 450. I could take some black satin or black gloss on the side and do the same thing. And when it comes to his tummy, instead of having to tape the chest off and the waist off, I was able to do a gray wash right across, and then with a toothpick in the indentation where the yellow should be, just apply a little bit of yellow to let it dry. I used a brush to kind of just tap on where the little blue section is, and admittedly, it is worth taping off around the red section to kind of get it as squared off as possible. So I think you need to look at the reason that you have the figure, the sort of where you expect it to get, and then look at your skill level to determine what sort of customizing options work best for you. I hope right from episode 72, when I started out with just how to thicken ball joints, up until episode 274 that certainly talked about some beginner basics, right through episode 450 where I went to a little bit more moderate tips and a few basic tips, to now where I at least discuss advanced tips, though I don't really do the advanced techniques myself. I hope I've been informative, and I hope that you've kind of learned along the way as I've learned as well. Oh, and of course in episode 301 when I dyed those arms, that was an adventure in and of itself. I would say do what you're comfortable with. Do what works best for you. Anyway, thanks for giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I hope that I have sort of, cleared up the customizing controversy. I'd love to hear your thoughts about everything. And I, again, would say please hit that subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel, let your voice be heard, and I very much look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit right here inside the videos.